What's going on, everybody? Night Haro here. Guys, by the end of this video, I am going to have as complete of an answer to this question of, is Helldivers 2 breaking computers and should you be concerned, as I think you can possibly get. Now, I will say that over the past, I spent the past 4 or 5 days, in every free chance I got, deep diving and actually fact checking all kinds of wild claims, all kinds of stuff having to do with issues that people are having. And I've come away with some very solid answers, but I want to actually walk through it so I can explain it to you guys very clearly. Now, I tell you that because a lot of the fact checking that I did, it is very clear to me that many of the creators, pretty much all of the creators that we're going to be talking about today, did not do. And I am not trying to, I tell you that because it is very easy to make a very dramatic, a very heartfelt even video about something, saying, hey, I feel this way. Hey, this is the way something is. It's actually very easy to do that kind of video. It is difficult to spend days, weeks, hours researching for a video, making sure all of the information you have is complete as possible, as accurate as possible, reaching out to sources who are technical computer programmers who work back in for various, AAA game companies and other large companies, some smaller companies as well, reaching out to hardware, suppliers, people who own businesses where they distribute hardware, people who build computers and what have you. It takes a lot of work to do that kind of journalism, guys. So please, if you appreciate this kind of video, I need you to like and subscribe. I know it's ridiculous, but honestly, I've done these kind of videos before. This is the only kind of video I do on my channel is deep dives. And it's a whole lot easier for people to just make up stuff, to say that a game does one thing, whether we're talking about mechanics at a game or build advice or what have you, than it is to actually spend the time to give real quality advice. So if you care about getting quality advice, I hope you'll like and subscribe, all right? This might be a good place for you. I don't usually do videos like this. I might start doing this more in the future, but if this video falls flat, I'm just not going to. It took a lot of time and effort, far more, again, than it did for these guys to essentially go off the cuff. I don't want to say make up things, but draw conclusions that were not based in what appears to be fact. There's all kinds of reports about this. There's issues with stuttering, with locking, restarts, whatever. And several creators, and I think this is where everything started. And actually, let's just go to the start of this. About a month ago, Claysthetics, he said that in a video, well, first he said that the CEO of Helldivers 2 was lying, and it was clearly in his thumbnail. And then he said he was underplaying issues with Helldivers 2. I will say I see no evidence of that, and he seemed to present no evidence of that, so I'm not really sure what he's talking about there. It says clearly on his thumbnail that the CEO was lying, so I assume that it would be very obvious in the video where he was lying and what he was lying about. I could not find it, so maybe you guys can go check out that video and see, I guess, if I've missed something. I have not been able to find, though, any evidence of this, and, in the video, Clay actually admits that it wasn't Helldivers that killed his SSD.
In my situation, this was a Windows 11 thing that did kill my SSD.
It was Windows, but then he still goes on to continually blame Helldivers for the issue.
Windows 11 was the gun. GameGuard was certainly the thing that pulled the trigger on that. And I am 100% certain about this.
And as far as I can tell, this is one of the first instances that I could find of someone suggesting that Helldivers was breaking computers. Now, Helldivers has had issues with performance in this last patch. People are saying, but some of the same people that are just seem to be making up things are saying that this is the worst it's ever been. I don't know if that's true. Certainly it's not for me, and I asked a fair number of people, and you know what? I actually did a poll to get some data on that. We'll talk about that more later, and it is, the poll was concerning, I will say that, but it hasn't been for a lot of the people that I've talked to, okay? But that doesn't mean anything. Just because I haven't had problems, you haven't had problems, doesn't mean other people aren't having problems. So, and I do think that there might be a link with all of these things as well, or at least with a lot of them, actually, not all of them. A lot of them are different things, but we'll go through each one of those. But as far as I can tell, this is the first instance where I think really people are saying, hey, Helldivers 2 is breaking my computer. Now, in this particular video, Clay goes through and he talks about how another user, a friend of his, it would seem, on X, Muox, if I'm saying that right, '03, said that.
Now, in Waz's case, his 5090 almost died. How did this happen? So his PC crashed 5 times today. Guess how many times I tried to play? 5. Couldn't even complete a single mission. It crashes my whole PC.
His 5090 almost died while playing Helldivers or from playing Helldivers. I have looked into that. I actually went and looked up the post, and I keep seeing kind of a theme here with this where someone is saying something, and then I look at the info, and the info doesn't seem to say what the person is saying it says. So there seems to be some disconnect here, but that's one of the things here. But all of the behavior that I have looked at and reported by this user was actually consistent with a known issue that Gamers Nexus, which if you don't know Gamers Nexus, there's someone who does a lot of reports and news, S tier news outlet for gamers. You should go check them out. Subscribe if you're not already. At least keep an eye out because they could let you know about some really important things. If things are really causing issues, Gamers Nexus will absolutely be one of the people covering it. But intermittent power spikes have been an issue that they have covered for 3 years. So I think like 4-ish years have been when this is a problem. And if you don't know what this is, basically a lot of the newer GPUs are more and more power hungry. This is even worse with NVIDIA, but I do believe it's actually affected AMD graphics cards as well. And periodically, they will have these power spikes where they just draw a ton of extra power. And what will happen if you don't have enough overhead? So if your computer needs 500 watts and you've got a 500 watt power supply, just go with me here, and it tries to draw all of a sudden 700 watts for a second. Because of the power spike on the GPU, this intermittent power spike, what the computer will do to protect itself, it's trying to draw too much power, it doesn't have enough. Well, that can cause damage to the computer. So it will shut itself down, okay? And so that is really what it seems like this person was, the issues they were having. I see no actual evidence that it was caused by Helldivers 2. This person is also, I will note that Clay also continually blames GameGuard for various issues, again with no evidence, and also seem to link seemingly unrelated things. Now, I'm not going to go through everything that Clay happened to say in his video because once you see there's no evidence for a handful of things and there's a lot of things being pulled out that don't really seem to be related, at some point it's not really worth fact checking anymore. I will again say that if you go and look for this X user that posted about this stuff, they did eventually RMA their graphics card, and they came back and said we couldn't find anything wrong with it. Again, all of this sounds very much like an intermittent power spike. A 5090 would be a graphics card that would be pulling a lot of power. A lot of pre-built systems, guys, will cheap out on the power supply unit, and that can cause these kind of issues. Or if you have a really high performance GPU, such as a 5090, which I did see on quite a few people, that have had issues, it is with a 5090. That could be somewhat related to the game. That could be part of the issues that the game is causing, but we'll get into that a little bit more at the back end. But it is no evidence, again, I don't want to say it's not happening, but there is no evidence that is actually Helldivers 2, okay? And that is a scientific way of saying, an ethical way of saying that for all intents and purposes, no, it's not, okay? But I can't say that. It's hard to prove a negative. There might be somebody out there. There might be some issue. But we'll go in more in depth, like I said, a little bit later. So then fast forward to about 6 or 7 days ago, depending on, as the time of release of this video, Odo, who is another Helldivers YouTuber, he did a video saying that, and I will, very much to his credit, he said that it really seemed like he was very... not like absolutely this is a thing, but he said Helldivers 2 is freezing people's PCs and potentially breaking them. Now, the entire 11, 12-minute video is basically insinuating that probably it's Helldivers 2 that broke his computer and is potentially breaking other people's computers. Now, the issue here is that Odo has and one thing I'll note about all of the things that we're going to talk about today with these various creators, admittedly, none of them are particularly technical, and when I've listened to them. I am somebody who's a very much a computer enthusiast. I'm actually working on a video to kind of explain to people how and really why you probably should build your own computer, because it's not too hard. Anybody can do it and you'll get the best bang for your buck. But I am someone who's pretty technical, and I can tell you, listening to them, that a lot of them don't really know what they're doing. They have friends and other people that have been helping with this, which is totally fine. There is just a really big step, guys, between thinking something, not being sure about it, talking to your friends about it, telling them you think something, to spending the time it takes to make a YouTube video and not doing any research on if what you're suggesting is actually correct. And this is something that, happens all the time. And I will tell you guys, it is a lot easier to make a video that is not well researched, that is, even if it's heartfelt, honest, sincere, it's a lot easier to make a video like that than it is to actually go through, like I've been doing for the last several days, and actually research this stuff to find out what the actual facts of the matter are. So Odo, turns out, so he was having problems with his computer crashing on stream, et cetera, et cetera. It's very frustrating for him. Turns out he has a CPU and motherboard combination that has another known issue that's been covered recently by Gamers Nexus, where there's something going on either with the CPU or some sort of software that runs it, or rather it's on the motherboard, and it's giving too much power, and it's literally burning out CPUs. And it seems like this is likely what the issue that Odo was having. Again, reference the Gamers Nexus coverage. This affects, for those who don't know, this is Ryzen 9 9800s, the 9800X3Ds, which a lot of people, all of this stuff that we're talking about, these are like the top end graphics card. And I think that is also one of the issues here, or top end hardware. A lot of these people are having it. It seems to be affecting people with the highest end units. And so that also might be, if you're a streamer, you probably have one of the higher end units. I know certainly I have a rig that is bigger and better than what I would personally use, but I also, again, being kind of techie, I know to buy a little bit behind the technology because that's the best bang for your buck. So that's what I've done. So I don't actually have a lot of these things. So he also spent about half his video talking about this topic and covering other community members who have had issues, and claimed that Helldivers 2 was breaking their CPUs, GPUs, and even power supplies. Again, I have looked at each one of those instances. He spends quite a bit of time on one where there's a power supply, and this person is blaming intermittent power spikes, but he's blaming the game for it. And we can talk more about that later, about how that could be somewhat true, but really it's the power supply issue there. I mean, the first thing it's typically going to break on your PC is your motherboard. And the second thing, it's going to wear out first. And the second thing is probably your power supply. And again, if you don't have a power supply with enough headroom, meaning, extra more than you need, first off, you should do that because your computer will run more efficiently. You don't want to be right at the max of what your computer can run, but it also makes sure you don't get those intermittent power spikes, because they happen and then they haven't been addressed for a while. At least it won't cause your screen to either black screen or restart on you. Okay. Now, after this, there's also TeaBo, who's been having performance issues. He actually opens this video. This is more recently. It's only a couple of days ago, I believe. Performance issues. He opens this video saying,
performance issues so severe that players and content creators alike have had CPUs, SSDs, and motherboards completely break over playing Helldivers 2.
Now, if he means they broke when they were playing Helldivers 2, sure, but clearly that is not the intention as far as I can tell. This is someone taking what was, one person's claims that were not based in fact, another person strongly suggesting, and now he's gone to they are in fact breaking, okay? So we kind of see the rumor mill happening a bit here. He offers, again, no evidence for this. He references the two videos that I already mentioned and maybe some other posts, but again, there is no evidence whatsoever that Helldivers 2 is actually causing this problem. Now, many of you might be saying, can a game even break a computer?
It's kind of like the New World game that was causing 3080s to melt or crash or burn up POS caps, right? Remember that problem when 3080s were dying? The game wasn't the problem. The game exposed a problem.
Well, I actually asked the back-end developer about this. Someone I know works for a AAA gaming company, someone who's very knowledgeable. The short answer is no. And the longer answer is there are potential ways things could cause problems. And I'm not going to, it's a little bit outside the scope of this video, so I'm not going to run through them. Generally speaking, what we're talking about, and I also asked some hardware suppliers and other folks about this, and again, the answer is basically no. Now, with that, there is some nuance to that. There are a few things that could be an issue. For example, if a program is continually rewriting to a hard drive, those things only last for so long, and so that could take time off the life of that device. But generally speaking, it's not really going to mess things up. Some of you might be like, what about all the stuff that the Israelis have done? It's a little bit different in a couple situations. First off, a Nokia, brick phone is a little bit different than your computer nowadays, and the various permissions. There's other things about that. You can do a lot on a phone with not great software that you can't do on running Windows or other standard operating systems. There's also the deal, like, if you have a centrifuge, maybe that's in a power plant, and you can control something physically, yeah, maybe there's some things you could do, which again, reference Israelis doing stuff like that. But there's not really much physically moving on your computer that a program can really change it. If you have a spinning drive, that could be an issue. But generally speaking, the answer is no to most things. Now, having said that, there's also anti-cheat software. Anti-cheat software, because of cheaters continually going further and further, to try to arms race, if you will, anti-cheat software has gotten more and more invasive into your computer. And so anti-cheat software can do things that most other software can't do. Now, I don't think that's the case here. There's a lot of people, again, I think Clay in particular really seem to really be anti, cheat software and stuff like that, and several other creators have. A lot of them are blaming anti-cheat software. I will again say that a lot of these people have no evidence, and then they also will admit that they don't know anything about computers, but they continue to suggest that this is the problem. I'm sorry I didn't spend too much time chasing down, things that appear to be going on vibes versus facts, but that could be something. The more likely situation is that, and I'm offering you a hypothetical situation, is that if the issues with Helldivers, if it's unoptimized and there are issues for certain computers, it could be causing excess strain. And that excess strain, because things aren't optimized and there's other issues, the program's hanging up somewhere, maybe it hangs up and is continuing to do a really intensive process over and over again, it's kind of stuck there, that would exacerbate all of the known problems. Another issue here, and actually Odo had this in his video as well, is that there was a CPU that one of his community members, I believe, or someone in his Discord had posted that was there were problems with Intel 13th and 14th generations.
This is Intel's biggest fuck up that I have personally reported on in the 16 years or so that we've been doing this.
Where there was, this is known, okay, again, Gamers Nexus and other places have covered this, where there's manufacturer defects. And slowly those chips are all dying, and they will die eventually. But before they die, you'll slowly lose performance. So that particular person, and apparently Odo did this as well, they undervolted their CPU to try to, because it's a voltage issue, which would fry parts of their CPU, causing it to be permanently broken in that spot. And so slowly this chip, parts burn out and it gets smaller and smaller, what you can actually use. Therefore, the performance gets worse and worse until it just stops. So they undervolt it, which is not normally something anybody would do, to try to make it last and survive for a little bit longer. Odo actually did this on his, and he said he had a Ryzen, which doesn't have this problem. And in fact, most of the time we overvolt these things if you want really good performance, but you have to be very careful with that if you're overclocking your computer. That person had a 13th or 14th generation Intel CPU, and these things are dying. So he took that as evidence that the game was killing people's CPUs. Indirectly, maybe you could say this is true, but again, this is a known manufacturer's hardware defect. That is not the fault of Helldivers or Arrowhead Studios. And some of these creators, at least one of them, suggested that, Arrowhead should be offering to fix their computers for them, which is honestly a little bit wild, because they took the time to suggest that without taking the time to research if their problem was actually Arrowhead's fault. Or perhaps they did, but they lacked the technical knowledge to know these things. I will say, and actually this gets to a really good point here that I'd like to make, in researching this for this video, one of the many things I did is I went onto the official Helldivers Discord, and I asked if anybody had any evidence directly of Helldivers 2 breaking computers. Now, there is a whole section in the Helldivers Discord where community members, just like you and me, volunteer their time to help people that are having issues. And what at least one poster told me, and nobody disagreed with them, is that as far as they're concerned, they have not seen anybody that they have personally helped who it's actually been an issue with Arrowhead, and it's not one of these other known issues or something else software related that they could help them out with and fix. Okay. Had any of these creators done this, I think that, or done really any research, I think that they would have found that there doesn't seem to be any evidence that supports this is actually an issue with Arrowhead. So how did we get here, though? Because this is kind of wild, right? That everybody would be attributing this to Helldivers. Well, one of the things, a fact that has been shared with me, and I've actually chatted with a couple of friends with it, about 80% of gamers, guys, only play one game most of the time. 80% of gamers. So what that means, and I think what has really happened here with a lot of these creators, is they've taken, if I only play one game, if I'm one of those people, and my computer has issues playing that game, well, that game, they say, they conclude, is causing the issues, and therefore you have a situation where correlation, they're taking to mean causation. And correlation does not equal causation. Just because two things are related, they happen at the same time, doesn't mean if I only play Helldivers and my computer breaks, it's going to break while I'm playing Helldivers. And then what other people have said is like, this doesn't happen with other games. But then what we've also seen is those same people come back and say, now it's happening with other games. And as I mentioned before, if Helldivers has some bugs that are causing a little bit of extra strain on some of the hardware, and the hardware is defective, it's going to make that defect come out quicker. And then they're going to eventually experience it, in the case of the Intel situation, for example, eventually with other games that are less demanding. And essentially, again, everything that I've looked up, all of the things I could fact check, and I've gone through quite a few, indicate that that is exactly what is happening. And that nowhere in this is Arrowhead or Helldivers actually breaking people's computers in any sort of direct way, right? Which is really what we're all essentially talking about. And again, I will say that one of the major issues here is that some of these YouTubers here have drawn conclusion. They've assumed correlation is causation, and then they've decided to share these thoughts with their communities of tens or hundreds of thousands of people. Okay. And I will note that some of these same creators that have these huge issues and they're so mad at Arrowhead because of the bugs and the game is freezing up and what have you, really seem to have a double standard, because they expect Arrowhead to be perfect and do, or at least do really good, do better than what they're doing. And then they're doing zero research on, before they announce to tens or hundreds of thousands of people that some game is breaking their system. I personally find that troubling, let's just say. So, should you be worried about playing Helldivers 2? Again, if you don't have certain of those, pieces of hardware that have known issues, the answer is no. Yes, a game might crash. Yes, it might lock up. Is that going to break your computer? By all accounts, if you don't have a pre-existing condition with your hardware, no, it's not. Can I say for sure that it won't and there's not going to be any issues? I mean, you're asking for a guarantee that I can't possibly make. All I can tell you is all evidence points to Helldivers not being an issue, okay? So it really begs the question of, was any research done in the first place? So I will tell you that I personally will continue to play Helldivers. I will continue to stream it and continue to record it. I don't do a ton of Helldivers content. I love the game, but for me, it's less. I normally do really in-depth guides about stuff like this and well-researched things. Hopefully you can see that in what I'm doing here. And Helldivers to me, though, is one where I just like going and blowing stuff up. Other games, I do have spreadsheets on other games and, do all kinds of math and stuff. But for me, Helldivers is about playing GI Joes and pretending like I'm Rambo or Arnold Schwarzenegger, just blowing stuff up, right? Jason Statham, doesn't matter, blowing stuff up. That's what Helldivers is for me. So that's what I tend to do. I've done a few guides and stuff like that. So all that out of the way, are there issues with Helldivers right now? Yes, there are performance issues. There actually will probably be a patch for it any day. Here's what I will say about Helldivers, guys, and about a lot of the people that are very negative on them. Helldivers is one of the best game companies out there, period, bar none, full stop, okay? They're right up there with Larian, okay? These are guys that chose a monetization that is very, very pro-consumer. These are guys who, the game is $40, guys. Most of these guys complaining, doing zero research on any of this stuff before they say that the game is breaking people's computers. Most of these guys have thousands of hours in the game, and they paid potentially as little as $40 for it, okay? The reason I care about this, and the reason I'm calling out these guys by name, not because I like a lot of these guys, okay? I have no issues with them personally. But here's the thing. I care about games, and I bet you guys do too. And I bet these guys do too. We need to reward great companies, and we need to be mad when companies do terrible things. And when good companies do things we don't like, let's let them know. But let's not make up things or do zero research before we put out a video to tens or hundreds of, even 5 people, but hundreds of thousands of people saying that a game, scaring people, fear mongering, saying that a game is breaking people's computers when we have no actual evidence of it, just hearsay and a bit of correlation, and don't actually know. And if you don't know enough to do your research and to be able to figure out if something is likely or not, then perhaps I might submit, don't do a video on it. Don't put that on the internet. It might be a pretty good idea, because what we don't want to do is punish great companies like Arrowhead. Guys, Arrowhead has had its issues, and I want us to continue to complain and let them know when we're not happy about stuff. Absolutely. Let's keep doing that, right? Right. We don't want to just be glazing on them and just saying, hey, they can't do anything wrong. But at the same time, I can tell you that Arrowhead has reacted and listened to the community better than any other game I know, period, full stop. And I've been covering games for a living for like 4 or 5 years now, okay? And I've been playing games since I was a child and keeping an eye out. But before I started covering this as a job, I thought I knew a lot about games, and then I started covering them as a job, and I realized I didn't know that much. So I would just encourage, let's let them, we're mad about the locks, we're mad about these issues, but let's not blame them for stuff that is completely out of their control. And when also they're doing the best they can. Give them time. Let them fix the game. I know it's frustrating, but they don't charge a monthly subscription. And just to give you an idea of what Arrowhead has done, guys, when this game came out, we only had 2 factions. We've got a 3rd faction. We didn't have we didn't have all the different kinds of chargers we have now, all the different flying automaton units, the fire brigade. We didn't have city maps. We didn't have the Meganess. We didn't have level 10 helldiving, super helldiving. We didn't even have that. They added that to the game because some of us really wanted it. Even though they know that was a minority of the community, they did that for the minority of community. And as someone who loves playing on max difficulty in most games, I appreciate that so much. They didn't do it because they would make them more money. They did it because they wanted to make a great game. And so please, let's not hate on a company. Let's not say that they're lying when they're not and provide no information from it. Let's not blame them for things that are out of the control. And yes, let's continue to let them know we're not happy about balance issues. We're not happy about performance issues. But again, they're listening. They have listened, and they're trying to act upon that. And, I know it might not meet the expectations of everybody out there, what they're doing. Here's what I would say to you guys. Arrowhead is, again, it doesn't get any better. It really doesn't. There are other companies that might be just as good, that may be a little bit better, but within a margin of error, it does not get better than Arrowhead. And if you're not happy with what Arrowhead is doing, you're probably not going to be happy with what any company is doing. More likely, we want all of the game industry to get better at what they're doing, because a lot of them are not measuring up. Sure, I'm fine with that. At the same time, we can't punish the best companies out there for doing the right thing for us and doing the right thing for the game. If we do that, we'll be killing the thing that we love. So if you care about games and you want to see them get better, we have to be realistic, and we also have to be understanding, and we also have to demand better of me and of other creators here, guys. Another thing here, and I'll kind of end with this, is that the work that I did on this, guys, this video will likely get very few views, okay? I can promise you I spent a lot more time on this video than many of the videos that these other creators have done. They're going to get more views. They're going to get more clicks. I spent hours and days working on this to give you accurate information. If you care about accurate information, please like and subscribe. Share the video with other people, because if nobody watches this kind of video, I'm going to be honest, I can't keep doing this. I've been doing really deep research videos for a long time, and if I can't make a living doing it, eventually I have to stop. So if you care about fact-based games, news, and reporting, if you care about fact-based information about games, not that some of these creators don't do amazing things for the game, because everybody I've mentioned today knows more about Helldivers than I do, I'll be honest, okay? But if you care about that, please like and subscribe, share the video. I'll try to keep making good content like this if so. There's a lot of you who might be saying, yeah, but what about the creator program? There's some issues with that. What about the other issues, the drama that's going on with Helldivers? You know what? I did all that too. In fact, I am going to make a video on it. I'm going to release it at the same time as this one. So just check. I'll link it here at the end of the video. I'm going to release them at the same time. But I actually covered those topics as well. And there are some very valid criticisms. I will say that I have a lot more information than I think most people do on this stuff. And I'm going to include that in that video. So if you're interested, go check it out, and we'll see you there. Thanks everybody for watching.